everybody. This is Steve Rao, and I'm here today to open up Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. I wanted to take the time today to just say that tonight the world is watching several important developments unfold at the same time. And I think the question to ask today as we are talking on the show is, are we entering an era of global competition where diplomacy, technology, energy, and national security are all becoming intertwined or connected? Normally in politics, we look at them in different lenses. So today we have the United States and Iran talking. President Trump says negotiations have resumed and calls this Iran's last chance. But Tehran says there's no direct negotiations. So war continues in the Middle East and there's no resolution really in sight. At the same time, we see war in Ukraine continue to evolve, with long range drone warfare increasingly bringing the conflict deeper into Russia. So we don't know whether diplomacy will work if we have two wars going on at the same time. In Lebanon, Israel and Lebanese officials are returning to the negotiating table. But the question is, will Hezbollah disarm? And will this area of the world be secure? But then there's another battlefield, the technology battlefield. China is making aggressive movements in AI. And a lot of people are worried about whether this is going to hurt the United States of America or whether this will accelerate job loss. AI, semiconductors, energy, satellites with SpaceX and Starlink, data, computer power, all of these are emerging into issues that are affecting our national security. And yes, here where Mark Lee and I live in North Carolina, what happens in Tehran can affect the price of gasoline in North Carolina. What happens in Ukraine can affect security all through Europe. What happens in China's AI labs with Alibaba and all these innovations can affect our jobs in America. And what happens with SpaceX can change the relationship between government, technology, and national security, and an entrepreneur in the United States who will very soon control probably about 3% of our GDP. The point I'm trying to make before we open our discussion is that all of these are issues that are intertwined, they're connected. So today we're going to talk about world politics, but we're going to talk about Iran, we're going to talk about Ukraine, we're going to talk about AI and data and energy. Because this is a big concern as well. So I want to welcome Mark Lee for a few minutes today. And this is how I'm going to start running the show, is bringing these issues together and having a conversation about the world and world politics. Because today, world politics is more than just geopolitical relationships. It's about AI. It's about technology. It's about turbulence that we're seeing on all fronts. So welcome to the show, everybody.
I appreciate it and everything like that. I know one of the things you talked about earlier was this notion of the president, and maybe he is doing some of these things intentionally and all along those lines. And apparently, President Donald Trump is facing ridicule after repeatedly asking a woman to compare his performance with previous presidents during an Oval Office event. So the exchange unfolded while Trump signed an executive order establishing the Presidential Military Spouse Commission on August 3rd. So with several women standing behind him, the president turned toward one attendee and sought reassurance about his administration's response to military families. So critics quickly accused the president of fishing for praise, while another clip from the same event fueled separate commentary about his speech, because apparently there are some folks that are wondering, just like they were about Biden, about his physical and cognitive health. Now, he says he's in good health, but there are some people that are wondering about some of the words that he's saying and everything like that, because apparently in this one comment, he asked one woman behind him how his response compared with those of past presidents. I have one question: how would I compare in terms of response with other presidents of the past? No comparison, sir, the woman answered. Trump then pressed her to clarify whether she intended the comparison as praise. Is it good or bad? He asked. It's good. Actually, it's very good, she responded. We do okay, Trump continued. We do great, the woman assured him. Trump then brought former President Joe Biden into the conversation, asking a little more than Sleepy Joe. The woman appeared to chuckle uncomfortably before replying 100%. So apparently he's been comparing his administration to Biden's and having all these other emotions. But now there's even talk about him having his own word salad, which I know is one of his criticisms of Kamala Harris and everything like that. So I know you said that it was done intentionally, because I know there's been talk about him being drowsy. Apparently he had a word where he was talking about a conflict, not a conflict, but a conflict with Iran. And apparently some people are saying that he's mixing up his words, because he's not exactly a spring chicken either. I think the man just turned 80 as well. I just wanted your take on this notion of maybe it's intentional, the things that he does.
I think all these disruptions But I do think it's very interesting that when we look at world politics, we look at it from the prism of all these things coming together. So today, that's really what's going on. We've got two conflicts going on at the same time, and we have efforts to bring peace to the world. But
Mhm.
there's a difference between having a ceasefire and actually really having peace, because it takes work. You've got to bring parties together. Let's look at Ukraine, for example. There's no sense of what would the security arrangement for Ukraine be? When would the ceasefire take place? What kind of resolution would they occur between Russia and Ukraine, right? How would it be enforced? Now, this affects all of us because as long as the battle continues, we keep saying there's peace, but every day we turn the news media on and there's a drone strike from Ukraine. Russia, there was another attack from Russia, right? There was today's news. We talked about it on World Edition.
Right.
And so war continues. And like I said in this monologue, it affects us here because it affects Europe, it affects energy. So I think the question is, Kissinger was brought up today on Sasha Sore's
Mhm.
show. But when I think Kissinger, I think strategy.
Right. Yeah, he's
I
definitely a
mean, this was
strategist.
a time when Nixon was president, where China was the enemy. No one had ever gone to China, but they had this issue of detente,
Mhm.
this issue of we have to work with them. We're going to figure out how we work together. We're going to figure out how to collaborate. We're not seeing strategy from Trump on Ukraine. He's just talking in generalities, and he doesn't have a foreign policy team that's even able to do their own strategy, have his own Kissinger, because this president tries to dominate himself on all fronts. Now let's take Iran. Same thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he's saying he wants a negotiation. Iran says, no, we didn't want negotiation. He's using military strength. Even Admiral McRaven, who is one of the most senior advisors in the United States military, commanded the Navy SEALs, oversaw the bin Laden operation, says that there's military commanders that question today whether or not we should be going to war with Iran, or that their strategies aren't being taken into account, that Iran is still going to remain strong, that the internal workings of the country will not just vanish overnight, that there's no transition plan in place. And Trump says that we're going to pulverize them, we're going to obliterate them. I don't think a president has ever had success using military power as a political tool, right? Which is, I think, what we're seeing. But then when you take that, Mark, and then you look at the technology revolution, AI, energy, data centers, which we're hearing a lot about in Durham and Raleigh, these are all issues that are now affecting our national security,
Yep.
because national security is also economic security, right?
Yep. No
And
doubt.
and so I don't know about you, I'm hearing a lot of friends now really concerned about their jobs.
Hmm.
I'm hearing parents that are paying money for their children to go to school who are worried about, are their children going to have jobs,
Yep.
right? I mean, I mean, I think we will, but there's a lot of angst out there. I don't know why, but I'm hearing a lot of people in this triangle area losing jobs.
No, there's a
You
lot of
know,
angst, and not just in the triangle, but throughout the country and even throughout the world. We kind of heard a little bit of that from the gentleman in Belgium when we were having World Edition earlier today and everything like that. And I know this for a fact that my brother has got my two nephews, and one of them is going off to college in August. So he'll be heading off to UNCG, UNC Greensboro, and everything like that. But I do know that Malik is concerned. I mean, he's choosing a field that is a field that we much need, which is he wants to study political science with the hopes possibly of becoming what I call an advocacy or activist lawyer and everything like that. But that is a good field, and there's going to be a lot of need for it, whether it's people dealing with ICE or dealing with other things that are going to be in the news for a while. But how much money they make, that's a whole nother question. So I'm sure that there is some anxiety with my brother, and even though he's not married to Julius's mother anymore and everything like that, I'm sure that all of them, all the family members probably have some anxiety. And the other, his brother, my other nephew, is hoping to go into engineering. But these are all technically good fields. They're not as much of the soft sciences, as people are oftentimes concerned about people going into. Journalism might even be considered a soft science and everything like that. But definitely there are a number of people that are concerned about what kind of money they will be making when they go into the workforce, particularly if they're like in the arts or if they're in media or if they're in a number of other things. Because a lot of these jobs, anthropology and another other ones, don't necessarily pay that great. And as you have oftentimes said, AI is definitely impacting a lot of these jobs as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, and I think as I'm going through the list, and we talked about the geopolitical conflict, and affecting, but the fact is, and the other thing is it's about technology, it's about the future, and
Mm.
so I think that's the question we have to ask ourselves: is that it's simply not whether Iran and Trump are talking; it's the description of what is happening,
No,
what is really happening there, and in diplomacy, sometimes the first step isn't just an agreement. It's about getting both sides to admit that they need to have a conversation.
yeah,
So a diplomatic
you
solution requires two sides working together, and
know,
that clearly doesn't seem to be happening in Iran.
no, that
Uh,
does not. That's not happening in Iran. Some people are wondering whether it's even happening in Ukraine and everything like that. We're right here in the Triangle, the Research Triangle Park. The Research Triangle Park is known for medicine and everything like that. There is an industry part of medicine that is expected to be worth over $17 billion, and there is a growing tsunami of a silver tsunami of adults aged 50 plus and everything like that. I know that I
yeah,
at
exactly.
64 and everything like that. So there's just saying, I'm seeing this article where they're saying the U.S. menopause market is projected to be worth over $17 billion. And a very well known actress, Holly Berry, just recently launched Respin Health, which is a menopause focused wellness platform aimed at addressing the needs of women going through menopause while helping to destigmatize the stage of life and everything like that. So, our is she's calling it Respin Health is Berry's second act move away from the Hollywood spotlight, positioning her as a business leader in the market she described as untapped and ripe for innovation. The platform offers four core features: community, connecting women in similar life stages for support and shared experiences, content, educational, and informative resources on menopause, commerce, curated products and services tailored toward these needs and care, personalized health plans using data to guide wellness strategies. And who knows, maybe I'll even try to get Holly to come in and talk to one of our shows if I can find a way to
I
reach
would
out
be
to her and
honored.
everything like that and everything along those lines. But it looks like she is tapping into a market that is not that tapped into as much because a lot of people have stigmas once you get to a certain age and everything like that. So she's still calling LA home, but she's definitely looking at tapping into this market. And she's been doing this now for almost a year or maybe a little bit over a year.
Yeah, I know, and and it's funny that Mark, we man. Well, first of all, I would be honored to interview Haley Berry. Would be awesome. But the other thing we didn't talk about was the Hormuz, Strait of Hormuz, right? And a ship went down again.
Mhm.
Yesterday we reported when I was reading The Economist this morning, talked about the news, and this is really affecting all of us, right? I mean, you close out the Strait of Hormuz, and you start seeing global supply chain disruptions, ship products not getting to where they need, goods and trade, and trade between countries is diminished. So this is all affecting us as well here in the United States and around the world. And and the other thing we don't talk enough about when we look at Ukraine is drone warfare. I
Mhm.
mean, 7 million drones over just a few 100,000 for the US. And if the cost of these drones goes down, the economics of war changes. A lot easier for countries to fight wars, which would make it harder in a world of multiple wars going on. Because, now I will say that it is also inspiring that a smaller nation like Ukraine can fight a larger place like
Mhm.
Russia. And Russia is also having all kinds of economic problems, just in terms of, their demoralized military, economy is at an all-time low. There have been even some rumors I've been reading about Putin being taken out, some kind of a coup. I read a lot, and I'm going to try to get a book on Putin because I think it's important for us to read about him, where he came from, what we think his agenda is. Why is he doing this? What's his game face? How does he save face by pulling out of the war? Or is he just going to stay in there, until it's scorched earth? But I think these are all,
It might be.
uh,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, go
these are
ahead.
all
I'm listening.
interesting issues. These are all, you know, we talked a lot about Iran and Ukraine, but then I think also, energy, AI, China with Alibaba, and every day there's an AI innovation coming out. And if AI becomes more, the cost of AI goes down, it's going to affect us here. Easier to put AI in, easier to displace jobs. But I think the opportunity is also, how do we innovate? How do we create new jobs? How do we stimulate economic recovery? And where you and I live, it's a perfect place with our universities, with our research. We talked about healthcare today. I think AI is one area where
Mhm.
AI can help advance research, cancer prevention, drug discovery. And we live in the research triangle, whether you're at Duke or Wake Med or, UNC Rex system, UNC system. These are all tied to universities where AI can help produce drugs quicker. So we might be able to see not only an increase in productivity, but an increase. I know, to give you an example, as a lobbyist, I represent a company that's developed an AI technology we're showcasing tomorrow that actually shows um, the actual AI robot agent, someone taking a call from someone that's depressed, and immediately that AI agent will find a physician in the hospital that can take that person on immediately and get them on the phone.
Wow.
That's the kind of technology that can save lives.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's part of the rural healthcare transformation. So there are also positive things that AI can do, and we're at the forefront of it in North Carolina with how much universities and how much research we have. So, I kind of get upset sometimes that there's so many people afraid of energy, which they need to be concerned about with how much energy these data centers consume. But AI is here to stay. And you can't say, well, I'm a progressive Democrat, I'm not going to talk about AI. You have to talk about AI, right? I mean, it's not going away. So,
It's not going away at all, and all along those lines. So definitely a lot of that is what is people are talking about, and all along those lines. I mean, there's a lot of people who've been talking about migration. I know we've mentioned it and everything like that. And I know a good friend of mine, I briefly mentioned his name earlier in our World Edition, Daryl Stover, and everything like that. But he was talking about this notion of Ceuta, which is a country that a lot of the migrants are going to, that's connected to Spain and everything like that. But apparently, it was a nation that had been colonized and is still having the impacts of colonization and everything like that. So I just wanted your take on this notion of what's going on in this whole notion of the way that people are invading, or not even invading, but flocking to countries where they are thinking that they are having a better sense, and all along those lines, because I know that that's part of what he was talking about, and all along this lines of how this has been a country that has been under colonial rule for centuries and everything like that. And it's one of the few that's still under colonial rule and everything like that. But I just wanted your take on this notion of the way that the migrants are treated worldwide.
migrants, can you repeat the question?
How do you think migrants are being treated worldwide? Because like even in Ceuta, which is a Spanish colony, we're seeing a lot of people that are going to Morocco and other parts of the world. But I just wanted your take on this whole notion of what's taking place in the migrant population, because it's not just a U.S. issue; it's an issue that is international in scope.
Well, I mean, I think all around the world we're seeing, I haven't really been keeping up what's going, but traditionally we're seeing in Europe, within Sweden, within countries, we're seeing kind of an anti-immigrant kind of buildup. People saying we want to take care of people in our own country, and we don't want people just coming in illegally, right? Um, and I think you're seeing this all across the board. And many autocratic dictators that are coming into power have kind of had this kind of anti-immigrant philosophy.
Mhm.
And I think that it's something that's going to continue. we call it Trumpism, but it's really kind of America first, my country first kind of mentality, which, in a globally competitive economy, when jobs are tight, in the middle of soon to be a global recession, um, or maybe it already is, people are going to fend for themselves. And how are you going to you're going to treat migrants poorly because you feel like if they're coming in, particularly if they're coming in illegally, we want to keep our borders safe, and we want to take care of our own country, and we want to, people that are paying the taxes in our country, we want them to have the jobs and those kinds of things. And so I had to research a little bit more about what's going on in other countries, but I have heard, about what's going on in Sweden, uh, you know, a lot of these European countries getting very hard for migrants to be there. My wife and I traveled on Lufthansa a few years ago, and we felt we were treated differently in business class just because we were Indian. Maybe that was just our perception, but
Yeah, because
after
it even comes down to something you've been talking about with this whole notion of democratic socialists. Because the person that was being quoted in Daryl's post and everything like that, Mariana Hernandez, she was saying that your timeline is about to be full of videos of Moroccans invading Spain with captions like, "This is what happened when you vote socialist." And I need you to pause before you share that garbage. Ceuta is not in Spain, it's not in Europe. It is physically, geographically on the continent of Africa, on Moroccan soil, taken from Morocco in 1415, before Columbus, before the Inquisition, before Spain even existed as a unified country. Spain as a colony in Africa in 2026. I mean, Spain has a colony in Africa in 2026, and nobody wants to call it that. This is what happens when you vote socialist. No, this is what happens when you colonize a piece of another continent and hold it for 600 years, and then act shocked when people from that continent walk into it. So the Portuguese crown apparently took Ceuta in 1415, and Spain inherited it in 1668 and never left. So definitely sounds like when Moroccans are swimming around the fence to set foot on what they would consider their own continent, and someone is calling it a Muslim invasion. So it sounds like these thousands of people are actually maybe trying to even come back to their homeland and everything like that. So that's kind of the point that these folks were making, because Morocco has claimed Ceuta for decades. The only reason there is an EU border there at all is in geography is because the European empire took a piece of Africa and never gave it back. And now that they're mad that the Africans keep showing up on it. So there's a lot of this kind of notion as well. So I don't know your thoughts around this notion of how sometimes colonial powers, even though the colonial era was decades ago, it still has its impact even on us now in the way that things are treated. Because I don't know how much you mentioned India, and I don't know how much you have friends that are. You definitely have friends that are Ukrainian and Russian, but I don't know how much your friend circle includes those that are African. But I have friends that are from places like Kenya and Liberia, and definitely Ghana and a number of other countries. So it's always interesting hearing their perspectives. And I know in the early days of Pod TV, we had the gentleman from Nigeria, and I'm hoping that we get some more African voices here on the network as well. But I just wondering.
We're going to start reaching out to bring on more guests, especially as we, we eventually join Fox News Network. But I just think it's it's just such a changing time in the world, and it's really hard sometimes to grasp of it. I think of it before I go to bed. I mean, every night, just the world that we live in today, and it's all converging. And I'm just, I just saw Disclosure Day, but you really wonder if there's aliens already living among us, or whether they're on the way.
Yeah.
But
Hey Steve, do you ever worry about? Because I know Sasha has alluded to it occasionally and everything like that. But with all these conflicts, I mean, there are conflicts on the African continent. There are conflicts not just Ukraine and Russia, but other conflicts in Europe and everything like that. I mean, I've got two nephews. I hope they live a very long life and everything like that. I know you've got kids. Do you ever worry about a World War III and even the state of the world, and whether we'll be able to survive another decade or 2 decades, or hopefully even multiple decades? Because I know you would love to see your kids grow well into their 70s and 80s.
I think so. I just think it'll be a very different world. I think there'll be a lot of advantages they have with AI and technology. Their lives could be very longer if there's, therapies that come on that cure cancer and those kinds of things. More travel to space, which could allow us to bring people together, particularly our country, to do some great things and feed the world as we run out of resources, food, maybe colonies on the moon, those kinds of things. So, and I think I don't think there'll ever be a World War III where, we'll just self-destruct. I still believe in the human mind and human reason. And the fact of the matter is, what makes us different is um, we we know how to love. We love the arts. We love music. We love sports. And you think of those positive things, and
Speaking
kind of
of love,
reminds me kind of reminds me of Robin Williams' tirade in Good Will Hunting,
mhm.
where he looked at that Bostonian and said, you made all these judgments about me, but do you really know what it is to hold a woman and tell her you love her and tell her that she's the center of your life?
Yeah.
Even though you may have gotten laid, but you're just a freaking kid. You don't know anything, right?
Don't
I
know
mean,
anything. Speaking
the
of love
point.
and sports and everything like that, are you ever? I know it's world politics, but it is a political concern because even it happens in soccer, it happens in another other sports as well. But are you ever worried about the commercialization of our fields and everything like that? The Dodgers have won the last two World Series. They just recently signed another Cy Young performer and everything like that. So it sounds like they're almost locked into ready to win another pennant, even though who knows, there might be some teams, even like my own Brewers, that could upend the fight. But it does seem like, and I know there's even talk about there not being a 2027 season because of them going in front of another negotiation. And I was actually just on the bus with a gentleman who was reading a book called A Union of Our Own, and he's looking at doing some collective bargaining stuff in the field of food, because I think he's worked with food trucks and things along those lines. But I just wondering, how concerned are you as a uh, former politician? Well, I'm not going to use the same term that Sasha did and everything like that, because I consider you a reformed politician. No, not necessarily wanting to do politics anymore, but loving this media spotlight and
I'm
everything
on
like
some
that.
powder.
But
I'm
how
on
concerned
some
are you
powder.
about this kind of like way that things are being done financially? Because I mean, it seems like to me like the Dodgers have a whole lot of bankroll behind them, so they can just stockpile all day long.
Yeah, I mean, this is it all costs a lot of money, right? I mean,
Mhm.
running these organizations is I'm a former tennis player, and you look at Rafael Nadal. It was a $1 billion organization. I mean,
Mhm.
Andre Agassi. I mean, these guys, the people they hire for their brand, for their. I'm just talking about tennis, but you look at these teams, the salaries, the training. I mean, this is a huge affair, and I think it's big
But
business,
yeah, but
and
even in world sports, we saw that with Ronaldo. We saw it with the World Cup in soccer. I mean, I think even some of the women at the North Carolina Courage are probably getting paid a decent amount. Not quite getting paid like those kind of Messi and Ronaldo kind of or Mbappe kind of salaries, but they're still getting paid pretty decently and everything like that. But I'm just wondering, like, do certain organizations have too much power? It's kind of like the Elon Musk, Donald Trump philosophy that if you got all this money, won't you always have the upper hand in these negotiations? Like I said, literally the Dodgers just signed what will be their third Cy Young winner. Now I was talking to a friend of mine that works at a convenience store, and he was basically like, "Hey, well, the small markets are just going to have to up their ante and get with their millionaire friends and do a better job of getting their roster stacked as well." So I was just wondering your take on this notion of these rosters being stacked. I mean, we're even seeing that with the team that LeBron James is going to, because Philadelphia should be a strong contender because they already had good players and were already a strong contender.
he's
And now
going to
they got good.
Philadelphia. I didn't
Hmm?
know that. I did
Yeah, he's
not know
going to
that.
Philadelphia. He's going to the Philadelphia. He's going to the 76ers.
Where does he leave? Where does LeBron play now?
He was playing with the Lakers, but yeah, I mean, like I said, he was with the Lakers, but he just signed with Philadelphia. I mean, I know there were people that wanted him to go back with the Lakers or go to Cleveland, but he signed a 2-year, $8 million deal with the Philadelphia 76ers, and that's marking the next chapter in his Hall of Fame career. So he just signed a new deal that I have him joining the 76ers this coming year, his 24th in the league. after leaving the Los Angeles Lakers following 8 seasons with that team. So he's technically committed till 28. So he should be in the 26-27 season and the 27-28 season. And of course, he had
Exciting. I mean, I think it's I think it's good, right? I mean, I think these people go out and sign different deals, and I mean, maybe I like the Sixers. I really like the Lakers too. Um, but I mean, I think it's good. It keeps sports exciting. Let's see, this guy can do it. I mean, you're starting to see these athletes getting older, like Djokovic, 39 years old, still getting to semifinals of majors. Is he gonna be able to win one more? But I've got to run, Mark. It's been a good show. I appreciate. Well, no, I mean, I want to go the whole hour, but I thought we were going to be 30 minutes, and I've got to.
No, it's 30 minutes of work, and I've got another show coming up at 6 o'clock. So, and LeBron's
but I mean, folks, but the message today is that we bring it back to world politics. That Ukraine, Iran, AI, data centers, jobs, they all mean power. Power in some capacity, diplomatic power, economic power, political power, military power. And as David M. Walker, who's also an analyst on our show, often says, those are the four areas of a superpower supremacy: economic power, political power, military power, diplomatic power, and then cultural influence. So on this show in World Politics, we're seeing it all come together. We're seeing the world change a lot in front of our eyes every day. And it's going to be interesting as I return now more full time on this network to have this conversation, to bring in guests, which we look forward to doing. So thank you for being with us today. That's my final take, and looking forward to being on again on Thursday. I'll be on my way back from Raleigh for a round of meetings, but that's the way it is. August 4th, 2026. That's what Walter Cronkite used to say, one of my heroes. And I'm going back to the old school. And that's the way it is. World Politics on Roku TV. This is Steve Rao signing off. Thank you.
Signing off. We're getting ready to get on out of here. This was a great show, and we'll be back on World Edition on tomorrow. Hopefully, Steve will join us on that as well. But we've got some other great shows coming here on the network as well. But definitely, hopefully, we'll see him later on and all in that line. But right now, time to get on out of here.
Thank you, sir.